As we're talking about women and influence, then there's that word feminism. In the same way we have intersectionality as kind of a third rail in some conversations, a word like feminism can be. How would you define it? What would you explain feminism to be? Or would you say, I'm not a feminist?
I took a while, and probably because of the intersectionality thing, I took a while to understand myself as a feminist, because I just thought this is me growing up. This is unique to Jo. This isn't I'm not saying it's everyone's experience, so don't hear me say that now. But when I was a kid, I would hear these women talking about how difficult it was for them. And I'm like, you and me's difficult is different, sis. Because you're saying that from your very wealthy neighborhood that you live in. And I'm not decrying it, but please don't say we're in the same boat. Because I'm living in the inner city, and as a Black woman, it's different for me. And so it took me a long time to hear. But for me, when I think of feminism, I just think of women being equal. I don't think it actually has to be this radical about stuff. I don't think we have. And so for me, when I look at Jesus and how he treated women, you know what? If you don't like the label feminism, fine. Just do what Jesus did then. Do you know what I mean? You'll find it's way more radical and it will get you into way more trouble. Do you know what I mean? It's I guess I don't feel I have to worry about that. I think feminism's got a lot to teach us. And I think as leaders, and maybe this is probably, I'm not a laid back person. So it's not like I'm like, oh, it's all fine. It's just as a leader, my filter is, it's my job to know what the world is thinking, whether I approve of it or not. I don't need to be defensive about it, but I need to know it, because how do I serve in a culture I haven't even tried to understand? And understanding isn't the same as agreement. But how will I ever have empathy as a leader if I don't hear somebody's voice? And just because that voice is angry, and just because that voice is uncomfortable, doesn't mean it's wrong. Because after all, anger is a secondary emotion. It's pain or fear. So actually the question, rather than why are you so angry, is who hurt you, or what are you afraid of? Do you know what I mean? As leaders, and particularly for those of us who say faith is the center of our leadership, I think we can have enough emotional distance from this to be able to hear things that make us intensely uncomfortable, that we might intensely disagree with, for the work of the kingdom that we actually represent. And so, do you know what I mean? I think that's the thing that stirs me on that. And so I'm not afraid of, I think you should read feminist literature. I do. Why? Because they're made in the image of God. These are women who pay for their books, even. Hear their stories, hear their why. Hear their why. Don't impose your why. You know that way that sometimes we can listen just to give our answer. You're like,
oh, yes.
And you just wait for the break in the conversation and say, and do your whataboutism or something. No, hear it. Feel uncomfortable with it. God is not insecure. Jesus ain't insecure. He knows who he is. So why do we have to be, you know? So I think feminism has a lot to teach us. And honestly, and this is, if we were doing our job, perhaps it may not have been required.